Picture a screen the size of a 4-story building, standing in the middle of a cornfield in Indiana. Now fill it with Marilyn Monroe. Add 200 cars packed bumper to bumper in rows of gravel and mud, engines ticking as they cool, windows fogging from the inside for reasons that have nothing to do with the temperature. Add the smell of hot oil from a snack bar the size of a bus station bathroom. Fry grease that has been cooking since 1947 and will still be cooking in 1962. Add teenagers who have been told, explicitly, by their parents, their pastors, their gym teachers, and at least 2 sitting United States senators that places like this will ruin them. That's a drive-in theatre. Specifically, that's the Valley View Drive-In, Millbrook, Indiana, population 6,000, on a Friday night in July of 1956. It is simultaneously the most innocent place in America and the most dangerous, depending entirely on which generation you belong to. Your parents think they're sending you to watch a movie. The town council thinks they've licensed a family entertainment venue. The local newspaper ran a piece last spring calling drive-ins wholesome American recreation and printed a photograph of a mother, a father, and 2 small children eating popcorn in a station wagon, looking like a Norman Rockwell painting come to life. That family was probably paid to be there. You know what actually happens at the Valley View on a Friday night, because you've been working there since the 2nd week of June, and what actually happens is considerably more interesting than Norman Rockwell. Here we go. The thing nobody tells you about working at a drive-in theatre is the grease. Not the cooking grease though, that's bad enough. I mean the mechanical grease. The grease on the speaker posts. The ones that hold the little metal window speakers you hang on your car window to hear the movie. 200 speaker posts sunk in concrete, each one coated in a fine layer of rust and machine oil that accumulates through years of Indiana weather. You know about this grease because it is currently on your hands. Your uniform is white, or it was white when Mrs. Loomis handed it to you at the start of June. Now it's white with a brownish grey smear along the right forearm where you brush the speaker posts, reaching through car windows to hand out food orders. You've washed it 11 times. The smear doesn't care. Your name is Ray Kowalski. You're 17 years old, 6 feet tall, 145 pounds, which is to say you're the kind of skinny that comes from spending your actual food money on gas for the 49 Ford you share with your older brother Danny, who's currently working the summer at the steel mill in Gary and will not be back until Labor Day, and will absolutely notice that the front left tire is getting thin. You arrived in Millbrook, Indiana 3 months ago, not from a foreign country or a distant village. From Chicago, from the south side of Chicago specifically, which in 1956 is not quite a foreign country, but might as well be, as far as Millbrook is concerned. You're staying with your Aunt Clara on her farm because your mother thought you needed structure and fresh air after you failed geometry and got caught smoking behind the Woolworths on 63rd Street. You did not ask to come to Millbrook. You did not ask for structure. You did not ask to stand in a gravel parking lot in 90-degree heat, carrying a metal tray loaded with hot dogs and Coca-Cola and cherry snow cones, while couples in cars pretend they're watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers when they are clearly not watching anything. But here you are, and the grease is on your hands and the night is young, and in about 45 minutes Ronnie DeWitt is going to do something so spectacularly stupid that will be talked about in Millbrook until at least 1973. First, though, you have to survive the intermission rush. It's 6:45 on a Friday evening in mid-July, and the Valley View is filling up. The gates opened at 7, which means the early crowd has been trickling in since 6:30. The families with small children who need to get their spot and set up the folding chairs and the blankets and the mosquito coils before dark. They park in the front rows closest to the screen because the screen is so enormous that from anywhere in the back, 40 rows, Marilyn Monroe's face is roughly the size of a real human face, which is either artistically interesting or completely beside the point of cinema, depending on your perspective. You're watching the early crowd from behind the snack bar counter when Dale walks in. Dale Moretti is your manager. He's 31 years old, shaped like a refrigerator, and has a face that looks like God started with good intentions and then lost interest somewhere around the chin. He's worked at the Valley View since it opened in 1948, which means he has seen everything. Every variation of teenage stupidity, every possible malfunction of the projection equipment, every permutation of weather disaster that a July in Indiana can produce. He does not enjoy his work. Kowalski, he says, not looking up from the clipboard he's always carrying. The number 4 speaker post on row 7 is out again. Yes, sir. That's the 3rd time this week. Yes, sir. You know what that means. You know what that means. It means you pull the hand truck from behind the snack bar, load the spare speaker unit, and go swap it out before the second show starts. It means crossing 200 yards of gravel parking lot in the dark while people are trying to eat hot dogs and watch a movie. It means navigating between cars with your tray, because you are still a car hop, not a maintenance man. But Dale's philosophy is that at 65 cents an hour, you are whatever he needs you to be. Yes, sir, you say for the 3rd time. Dale finally looks up. His expression does not change, which is how you've come to understand that expression is basically his resting state, not a sign of any particular displeasure. He always looks like this. Rain, sunshine, full house, half house. Dale Moretti's face communicates exactly one emotion, which is the emotion of a man who has seen too much of the Valley View Drive-In Theatre to feel anything new about it. The afternoon delivery was short by 3 cases of Pepsi, he says. When you're not running food, you're counting inventory. Back cooler. You want me to do both. That's why you get 65 cents an hour instead of 60. He walks away, still looking at his clipboard. You pick up the hand truck. Let me tell you about a drive-in parking lot before the show starts, because it's one of those things that exists in photographs but never quite translates. It's not a parking lot in the normal sense of the word. It's a field, a literal farm field, because almost every drive-in theatre in America in 1956 is built on farmland, usually on the edge of town, because farmland is cheap and you need a lot of it. The Valley View sits on 11 acres that belonged to Howard Fitch until 1947, when somebody showed Howard Fitch an artist's rendering of a drive-in theatre and offered him more money per acre than Howard Fitch had ever seen in his life. And Howard Fitch made a decision he told his wife he regretted for about 30 seconds, and then never thought about again. The 11 acres are divided into rows, 22 rows to be exact, each one a gentle upward slope, because you have to slope the rows toward the screen, otherwise the cars in the back can't see over the cars in the front, and each row separated from the next by a gravel strip about 12 feet wide, which is the exact width of a 1950s American automobile, plus approximately 2 feet of clearance on either side. Those 2 feet of clearance are important. I'll come back to that. The speaker posts are every 20 feet along each row. Concrete posts, painted white once upon a time, now more of a tired grey. Each one has an extension arm at the top, and hanging from the arm is a rectangular metal speaker, about the size of a hardcover book. You drive up, roll down your window, lift the speaker off the hook, hang it on your window glass. The speaker has a volume knob on the side. That's the technology. That's all there is. In 1956, this passes for sophistication. Some families bring their own radios, battery-powered, tuned to the FM frequency the theatre broadcasts the movie audio. This is technically allowed. Dale thinks it's tacky. Dale thinks a lot of things are tacky. Dale has opinions that he keeps entirely to himself, because his job is to manage a drive-in theatre and not to editorialise on the choices of his customers. But you can see those opinions in the set of his jaw when someone pulls in with a 6-inch portable Zenith clipped to their sun visor. The gravel crunches under your shoes as you pull the hand truck toward row 7. The rows are labelled on metal, signs posted at the entrance to each lane. Row 1, row 2, all the way to row 22, though once you get past row 15, you're so far from the screen that what you're really watching is a large rectangle of light with suggestions of human shapes moving around on it. Row 22 is where the cars park when they genuinely don't care about the movie. Row 22 is, consistently, the most interesting row in the theatre. You don't work row 22 until you've been here at least 2 weeks, Dale told you at orientation. He said it like it was a reward. He said it like it meant you'd earned something. You've since come to understand that what you've earned is the experience of knocking on car windows at 11 o'clock at night and asking if anyone wants a Coke while not making eye contact with whatever is happening in the back seat. You reach speaker post 4 on row 7. You can see immediately what's wrong. The connection wire has worked loose from the terminal, probably from the vibration of 1,000 car windows being rolled up and down. You've learned to fix this. You set down the hand truck, crouch down, pull the small screwdriver from your apron pocket, tighten the terminal screw, wiggle the wire. The little red indicator light on the speaker housing flickers on. Fixed. You stand up, and a car pulls into the space next to you, headlights sweeping across you like a searchlight. It's a 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air. Two-tone, white and seafoam green. You know this car. Everyone in Millbrook knows this car. It belongs to Ronnie DeWitt. A word about Ronnie DeWitt. Ronnie DeWitt is 18 years old, which in 1956 in Millbrook, Indiana, means he is technically an adult, though the evidence for this is mixed. He's the son of Gerald DeWitt, who owns the DeWitt Ford dealership on Route 40, which means Ronnie has never in his life driven a car that cost less than $900, which is a fact that Ronnie communicates with every pore of his body at all times. He's not a bad person exactly. He's the kind of person who was told from birth that he was exceptional and has not yet encountered sufficient evidence to contradict this belief. He drives too fast. He talks too loud. He has the laugh of someone who learned to laugh by watching other people and decided they weren't doing it right, so he made his own version. Tonight, Ronnie DeWitt is in the Bel Air with Patricia Hollis, who is 16 and the prettiest girl in the junior class at Millbrook High and knows it the way you know your own name. Not with vanity exactly, but with the certainty of a fact that requires no further proof. They park in row 7, space 3. Ronnie rolls down his window, looks at you crouching by the speaker post and says, "Hey city boy, get us 2 Cokes." That's what he calls you. City boy. He's been calling you that since the 2nd week of June, when he showed up at the Valley View on a Tuesday night, and you told him he was in the reserved spot and he looked at you like you were a gnat he was considering whether to swat. "I'll bring the order to your car," you say, in the tone Dale taught you, which is the tone of someone who is working and therefore above the social dynamics of whatever is happening around them. "What else can I get you?" 2 Cokes, Ronnie says again. "And some of those nachos or whatever you call them." "Nachos are Thursday's special. Tonight we have cheese fries." Ronnie looks at you the way he always looks at you, which is the way someone looks at a broken vending machine. Slightly affronted. Genuinely confused about why the machine isn't doing what it's supposed to do. "Fine. Cheese fries." Patricia has already taken the speaker off the post. She's studying her reflection in the passenger window mirror, adjusting her hair. She doesn't look at you. You're not part of the equation Patricia is currently solving, which involves looking perfect before the screen lights up and the whole parking lot becomes a shared theatre and therefore a shared stage. You pick up your hand truck and start back toward the snack bar. The lot is almost full now. 200 cars, give or take. 200 different stories unfolding simultaneously in a gravel field in Indiana, each one separated from the next by exactly 2 feet of clearance. The sky above has turned from gold to orange to the deep, dusty blue that Indiana evenings do in July, when the day has been hot enough to wring the colour out of everything and the night comes as relief, soft and heavy with the smell of cut grass from the fields beyond the fence line, and popcorn from the snack bar and exhaust from 200 idling engines, and something underneath all of that. Something harder to name, something that belongs specifically to this hour, to this temperature, to the particular quality of light that exists for about 15 minutes between sunset and true dark in the American Midwest. You breathe it in. Then Dale's voice over the two-way radio at your hip. Kowalski. Snack bar. Rush starts in 10. You go. The intermission rush at a drive-in theatre is a particular kind of chaos that has to be experienced to be understood. When I say intermission, I need you to understand what that means in 1956 at the Valley View Drive-In. This isn't modern intermission where you pause a streaming service and wander to the kitchen. This is 180 families and couples and carloads of teenagers all deciding simultaneously that they need food, and all of them deciding this at the exact moment the intermission screen card appears. A cartoon hot dog dancing toward a cartoon bun, a cartoon Coca-Cola doing something interpretive and American, and all of them acting on this impulse at the same time, because in 1956 there is no pause, there is no rewind, there is only the inexorable forward motion of the film reel, and if you need to use the bathroom and you'd like a Coke and your kid has been tugging your sleeve about popcorn for the last 20 minutes, you have 14 minutes of intermission to accomplish all of that. 14 minutes. You know this because Dale has timed it. Dale has timed everything. The snack bar is a concrete block building, roughly 30 feet wide and 12 feet deep, positioned at the halfway point between the screen and the rear of the lot. This is strategic. This is Dale's one genuine contribution to the study of drive-in management, and he will explain it to you unprompted. The snack bar needs to be equidistant from all cars, so the longest walk anyone has to take is roughly 100 yards, because the research suggests. Dale uses the word research like he's read a journal, though you suspect he means what I've observed over 8 years. That customers who have to walk more than 100 yards are statistically less likely to make a second trip. Dale thinks in terms of trips. Every trip to the snack bar is a financial event. Every additional trip is profit. The goal is maximum trips per intermission per customer, which means the snack bar needs to be fast, the prices need to feel reasonable, and the experience needs to be frictionless. What it actually is a sweating linoleum counter with 3 industrial deep fryers, a popcorn machine the size of a small car, 2 soda fountains, a hot dog rotisserie, and 5 employees trying to serve 100 people in 14 minutes. You're at window 2. Your job at window 2 is take the order, punch it on the ticket, slide the ticket to Sandra in the back, collect the finished order, take the money, make the change, smile, next customer. Sandra is 44, has been making snack bar food at the Valley View since 1950, and her hands have the particular efficiency of someone who's performed the same motions so many times that her body does it without involving her brain. Popcorn bags, hot dog tongs, cheese ladle, all of it flows from her in one continuous stream of practiced movement. She never looks at the orders. She knows by the rhythm of the tickets what's coming before the paper hits the clip. 2 corn dogs, 1 Pepsi, 1 orange, you call out. Not because Sandra needs to hear it, but because Dale requires verbal confirmation at every station, and Dale is standing 6 feet to your left watching everything. 2 corn dogs, 1 Pepsi, 1 orange, Sandra confirms, her hands already moving. The line at your window stretches back 20 people. The parking lot outside is erupted into movement. Doors opening, feet hitting gravel, the specific shuffle and crunch sound of 200 people walking on gravel simultaneously, which is a sound you now associate so strongly with intermission that you hear it in your sleep. You take the next order. A man in a Pennzoil cap with a sunburned neck, and 2 little girls standing on either side of him holding his hands. He wants popcorn, a Coke, and 2 cherry snow cones for the girls. We don't have snow cones tonight, you tell him. Machine's down. We have regular ice cream cups, though, vanilla or chocolate. The little girls look at their father with the focused intensity of small children for whom ice cream cups are a reasonable substitute, and they want him to know this. 2 vanilla, the man says. He's already reaching for his wallet. 65 cents for the popcorn, 20 cents each Coke, 15 cents each ice cream cup. You do the math without thinking, $1.15. You've done this calculation so many times in the last 6 weeks that the numbers exist in your head as a kind of music, a rhythm of denominations and totals that your mouth produces ahead of your conscious thought. He hands you $1.02. Exact change. The man who pays exact change at a drive-in intermission is a specific type of person. Organised, conscientious, slightly proud of his preparedness. He probably counted it out while he was watching the movie. You say, "Thank you, sir," and slide the ticket, and the next customer steps up before the first one has cleared the window. This goes on for 14 minutes. By the end, your shirt is soaked through. Your feet ache from the concrete floor. Your right hand, the change hand, the hand that opens and closes around quarters, nickels and dimes 600 times a night, has developed a faint tremor from the repetition, like a muscle that's been asked to do 1 too many reps. Sandra passes you a cup of water without being asked. You drink it in 3 swallows. "Busy one tonight," she says, which she says every Friday night, and means as a compliment. Outside, the dancing hot dog and its cartoon companions have reached their narrative conclusion. The screen goes dark for 30 seconds. The projector changes reels. You can hear the mechanical clunk from the booth even from here, even through the concrete walls of the snack bar, a sound like a fist knocking on a door. And then the second feature begins. The movies matter. I want to say that clearly before we go further, because it's easy, from here in the future, to talk about drive-in theatres as if the movies were just the backdrop, just the cover story for what was actually happening in the cars. And they sort of were, but they also weren't. Here's the thing about 1956. Television exists, but it's in its infancy in Millbrook. Maybe 40% of households have a TV set, And those sets show 3 channels, 2 of them badly, and the programming ends at 10:30 with the national anthem, and then it's just static until morning. The radio is good, but it's not visual. The indoor movie theatres, there are 2 in Millbrook, the Rialto and the Palace, show first-run films at prices that a family of 4 cannot afford every week. The drive-in is affordable. The Valley View charges $1 per car. $1. Doesn't matter if there are 2 people in that car or 7. $1. You can stuff your entire extended family into a 1954 Buick Roadmaster and pay a single dollar. And if your kids fall asleep halfway through the first picture, you just keep watching the second picture and nobody is judging you and you don't have to find a babysitter. This is revolutionary. This is democratized entertainment in a way that 1956 America is barely beginning to understand. And the movies themselves, the specific movies that play at drive-ins in the summer of 1956, are something particular, something that does not happen at the Rialto or the Palace. The drive-in gets the B-movies, the science fiction, the horror, the westerns, the teenage rebellion pictures that the indoor theatres are slightly embarrassed to show. The Valley View is showing Invasion of the Body Snatchers tonight as the second feature, and before that, as the first feature, Rock Around the Clock, the Bill Haley picture, the one that's been causing actual riots in theatres in England, the one that parents in Millbrook have been writing letters to the Millbrook Gazette about, the one that represents, depending on your age and disposition, either the vitality of American youth culture or the beginning of civilization's collapse. Dale put Rock Around the Clock in the second to last slot on purpose. You know this because Dale told you. Dale doesn't explain his thinking often, but when he does it with the gravity of someone announcing a military strategy. The rock and roll picture pulls in the young crowd, he said, standing at the snack bar counter on a Thursday afternoon while you swept popcorn off the floor. Young crowd is cash. Young crowd doesn't just buy the ticket price, they buy the food. Kids spend more per head at the snack bar than families do. I put Rock Around the Clock at 6:45. That's the first feature. They're here for the best part of the evening. They buy 2-3 rounds of food. They leave after the second feature. I've got their money and the families are still here for the second show. He tapped the counter with one finger. That's management, he said. Then he walked away. You're starting to understand why Dale looks the way he looks, which is the face of a man who sees all human behaviour as a series of decisions that either do or do not result in additional snack bar revenue. But he's right about the young crowd, and tonight, the young crowd is here. You should know something about the young crowd in Millbrook, Indiana, in the summer of 1956, before I describe what they actually do. They are not collectively the juvenile delinquents that the newspapers and the magazines and the Senate subcommittees have been describing. They're not greasy-haired criminals in leather jackets sharpening switchblades in bathroom stalls. That's the panic version. That's what adults imagine when they lose sleep about teenagers. What they actually are is restless. Millbrook is a small town. This is not said as a romantic observation. It is a physical reality that shapes every waking moment of a 17-year-old's existence. There is one main street. There are 4 churches. There is a Woolworths, a Rexall drugstore, a hardware store, 2 diners, and the Farm Supply Co-op. There is the high school, which has 700 students and a football team that wins 3 games in 5 years and is still the thing people talk about most on Saturday mornings. And there is nothing to do. That's not entirely true. But let me tell you what something to do means in Millbrook in 1956. You can drive anywhere, everywhere. Gas is 23 cents a gallon, and the roads are flat and empty, and the nights are long. Half the teenagers in Millbrook spend their free evenings doing exactly this. Driving up and down Route 40 in a circuit that begins at the Dairy Dream on the north end of town, proceeds south past the hardware store and the Woolworths and the two diners, crosses the railroad tracks, turns around at the Sunico station near the county line and comes back. This circuit is known without irony as the drag. You drag the main. You do it in your car, with your friends, with the radio loud, and you see the same people doing the same circuit in the opposite direction, and you wave or you honk, or if it's the right car you pull alongside at the stoplight and rev your engine. That's one option. You can also go to the youth group at First Methodist, which meets on Wednesday evenings and involves punch and cookies and a pastor named Reverend Aldrich, who is 26 years old and desperately trying to be relatable in a way that makes everyone uncomfortable. Or you can go to the Valley View. The Valley View is, in the geography of Millbrook's social life, the only place where teenagers can exist after dark without adult supervision, with some plausible deniability to their parents, and with the added bonus of actually having something to watch while they do all the other things teenagers do after dark. This is the miracle of the drive-in. This is why parents are simultaneously drawn to it and terrified of it. It provides the cover of legitimate recreation, while its actual function is to give young people 2 to 4 hours of relative privacy in a space that their parents paid for. The American genius of the drive-in theatre is not technical, it's social. It invented, or at least perfected, the concept of supervised, unsupervised time. By 8:30, the lot is as full as it gets, and you're back out on the rows with your order pad, working the car hop circuit from row 6 to row 12, and the movie is playing. Rock Around the Clock, Bill Haley and His Comets. And the sound is coming from 200 small metal speakers hung on 200 car windows. So what you hear as you walk the rows is a strange, layered, omnidirectional version of the same music, each speaker slightly off from the others in volume and timing, creating an echo chamber effect that makes the music feel larger than it is, feel like it's coming from the air itself rather than from any particular source. And cars are moving, rocking some of them gently with the beat. Windows cracked to let out the heat of bodies in closed spaces. A hand trailing out of a half-open window, fingers drumming on the door panel. The night smells like engine heat and popcorn, and the particular sweetness of summer grass going dry at the end of July, the grass smell underneath everything else. A ghost of the field this used to be before Howard Fitch sold it. You work row 8. Row 8 is middle distance. Close enough to the screen that families still park here, far enough that the younger crowd has established a foothold. The dynamic shifts car by car. First space, a station wagon. 4 kids visible in the back seat, 2 adults in front, everyone eating from a big cardboard box of popcorn. Second space, a couple your age, visible through the windshield as 2 silhouettes sitting close together. Third space, empty. Fourth space, 4 guys in a '53 Ford, all of them in the front seat or leaning out the windows, arguing about something with the focused intensity of 17-year-old males arguing about anything. You approach the '53 Ford. "Help you guys?" The one leaning out the driver's window is Jimmy Palumbo, who works at the Sunoco station and has arms like knotted rope from changing tyres all day. He looks at your tray, looks at you, does the calculation. 4 Cokes, he says, and whatever that is. He points at the cheese fries on your tray, an order you're delivering to the next car. "Those are for row 8, space 6, I'll come back." I'll give you an extra dime if you get ours first. You look at the family in space 1 watching the movie peacefully. You look at the couple in space 2 who are emphatically not watching the movie. You look at Jimmy Palumbo's 4 Cokes order and the extra dime. Be right back, you say. You deliver the cheese fries to Space 6, a kid named Dennis Harrigan, who you recognize from the high school baseball team, sitting in a Dodge pickup with 3 other guys who all look like they share a single eyebrow between them, and you write up the Palumbo order on your pad and go back to the snack bar. This is the rhythm. Order, deliver, return, repeat. Your feet know the gravel now. You've stopped actually looking at the ground, started reading the terrain by feel, by the give of packed gravel under your shoes versus the softer stuff near the speaker posts. You can do this in the dark. You have done this in the dark, on the nights when a car's headlights catch you wrong and temporarily blind you, and you just keep moving anyway, running on memory and muscle. Your hands don't shake at this pace. They settle. There's something almost meditative about it. Once the intermission rush is over and you're back to the steady rhythm of individual orders. You could call it calming if your feet weren't hurting and the back of your neck weren't burning from a day of sun that doesn't quit until 9 o'clock in July. You bring back 4 Cokes and Jimmy's extra dime. Where are you from? Jimmy asks, handing you the money. He's asked you this before. It's a ritual question in Millbrook. They ask it every time they talk to you, like they're hoping the answer will change. Chicago, you say. Same as always. He nods, like this explains things that don't need explaining. You going back? End of August. He nods again. He takes a Coke from the tray and passes the others back into the car and takes a long drink. He's watching the screen where Bill Haley is performing with an energy that reads, even at this distance and through a 3-inch speaker, as something slightly incendiary. That music, Jimmy says. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. The sentence completes itself in the slight widening of his eyes, the way his fingers tap the car door in time without him deciding to. Yeah, you say. You write the ticket, take the money, make the change. The transaction takes 20 seconds. You're already moving to the next car. Let me explain something about the mechanics of a car hop that the movies always get wrong. In the movies, the car hop glides. She's a girl. It's always a girl in the movies. And she's wearing roller skates and a short uniform, and she carries the tray like it weighs nothing. And she arrives at the car window with a smile that exists in the category of things too perfect for reality. The Valley View doesn't have roller skates. Dale considered them. He told you, during your first week, and rejected them for reasons of liability. The gravel, he said. You can't roller skate on gravel, it's physics. What you actually do is walk, very quickly, with a tray that weighs, when fully loaded, something between 7 and 12 pounds, depending on the order. The tray has a folding stand that hooks onto the car window frame, so you don't have to hold it while the customer organises their order. But getting that stand deployed requires 3 distinct physical actions. Unfold the support arm, position the hook, engage the clip. And you have to do this while holding the tray level, which means your forearms are doing something like an isometric exercise for the entire transaction. After 6 weeks of this, your forearms look different. You noticed it 2 weeks ago in the bathroom mirror at Aunt Clara's. There's a definition there that wasn't there when you left Chicago. A slight ridge of muscle along the inner forearm, something your geometry teacher would probably describe as the result of applied force over time. Aunt Clara noticed it too. She said you were getting strong and brown, which is the most she's said about your body since you arrived, and you appreciated the kindness of it even as you recognized that, What she was actually saying was that you'd stopped looking like a skinny city kid and started looking like someone who worked for a living. You're not sure how you feel about that. You grew up in a third-floor apartment in Bridgeport, Chicago, where the smell was always slightly of the stockyards even 20 years after the stockyards had moved. Your father worked dispatch for the city bus system. Your mother worked at the laundry on Halstead. Your brother Danny worked the steel mill in Gary the minute he was old enough. The family assumption was that you would work too. Somewhere. Something. Probably not the bus system or the mill, but something that involved your hands and a time clock and a paycheck you'd cash on Friday, and that would cover your share of the apartment. Chicago didn't feel like that assumption was wrong. Chicago just felt like Chicago. Big and loud and full of people who had specific plans for their lives and were executing them, or failing to execute them with equal determination. Millbrook feels like a different conversation entirely. Millbrook feels like someone slowed down the record to half speed and made you live inside it. And now you're in a drive-in parking lot with forearms that look like someone else's forearms, and in 5 weeks you go back to Chicago, and you're not entirely sure what to make of the intervening time, but the gravel is solid under your feet, the tray is balanced, the order is correct. You keep moving. At 9:15, something happens. This is the part of the evening that doesn't make it into the letters to the editor. This is the part that exists in the space between the Norman Rockwell painting and the Senate subcommittee's worst nightmares, which is where most of real teenage life actually lives. At 9:15, a 1954 Mercury pulls into the lot. Not the regular entrance. The service entrance at the back left corner of the field, which is technically closed after 7:30, but the chain across it hangs loose. Always has, because Dale parks his own car in the service area, and he's never bothered to put a real lock on it. The Mercury kills its headlights before it turns in. You see this from row 10, where you're collecting empty cups and trash from the speaker posts. Another job Dale has invented for you in the lull between the second feature's opening and the first snack bar run. You see it because you've been watching the service entrance. You've been watching it for 3 weeks. Because 3 weeks ago you noticed that cars sometimes come in through it late at night, after the lot is full, and they don't pay the admission, and they park in the dark zone at the back of row 22, where the lot lights don't reach. You haven't told Dale about this. You're not sure why. Partly because you're new, and you don't know what the protocol is. Partly because the cars that come in through the service entrance are, without exception, cars full of older kids. Not teenagers, but the 19, 20, 21-year-olds who've graduated from high school and are in that in-between period of working jobs, and not yet having the kind of lives that require them to be indoors by 10. And there's something about the way they move that suggests they have some working arrangement with the lot that you simply don't have access to. Partly, if you're honest, because you just want to know what they're doing back there. The Mercury parks at the far end of row 22, engine off, just a shape in the dark, the chrome trim catching occasional light from the screen 200 yards away. You finish collecting cups on row 10 and move toward row 11 and try to look like you're doing exactly your job and not watching the service entrance. It is now 9:45 and the second feature is 20 minutes in. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and something has changed in the lot. This is the thing I want you to pay attention to, because it happens at the same time every Friday and Saturday night at the Valley View, and Dale knows it happens and has made a specific strategic decision about it. What happens is, the families leave. The families with small children, the station wagons, the Buick Roadmasters, the Ford station wagons packed with kids, They start to leave after the first feature. They stay through intermission because the kids are still up and the parents got their money's worth. But by the time the second feature is 25 minutes in, the small children have fallen asleep in the back seat and the parents are tired, and tomorrow's a Saturday. But it's also a Saturday with farm chores or yard work or church, and 10:30 is past the bedtime of anyone under 8. They leave in a quiet stream, headlights on, slow roll toward the exit, gravel crunching. And what's left in the lot after they go is different. The lot that remains is younger. The lot that remains is more mixed. Couples and groups, cars that arrive together and park together, the social geography of high school now made physical and literal in gravel rows. The lot that remains is noisier in a different way. Not the steady noise of families, but the burst and pause of young people entertaining each other, the sound of a car radio turned up after the family next to you has left, the specific laughter that comes at 10 o'clock on a Friday night when you're 17 and you've been let out into the world. Dale knows this happens. He's talked about it. After 10 on a Friday, he told you, the average spend per car at the snack bar goes up 30%. You asked him why. Couples, he said. Couples in cars after 10 o'clock need something to do with their hands. He said this completely without innuendo. He was talking about snack food. He was talking about the fact that when you're 17 and nervous and sitting close to someone in a car and you want something to occupy the silence, ordering food from the car hop is an acceptable and reasonably cheap solution. You've thought about this a lot in the 6 weeks since he said it, about Dale's worldview, in which all human behaviour is legible as a function of snack bar economics. You've also noticed that he's right. Hey, you're at row 14, space 8, taking an order from 2 girls you don't recognise. They might be from Shelbyville, the next town over, which sends a contingent to the Valley View most weekends when someone gets out of the car behind you and touches your shoulder. You turn around. It's Patricia Hollis, without Ronnie DeWitt. She's standing in the gravel in white canvas shoes and a yellow dress, and she's hugging her own arms, which seems like a strange thing to do in 90-degree weather until you realise she's not cold. She's the opposite of cold. She's upset, and hugging yourself when you're upset is a thing the body does involuntarily. Is there a phone? She asks. You look back at the 2 girls in the car, who are watching this with the alert attention of people who know they're watching something interesting. Inside, you tell her, behind the snack bar counter, Dale lets customers use it. I need a phone, she says again, like she didn't hear you. Behind the snack bar, you say more clearly, I'll walk you over. She follows you between the cars. She doesn't say anything. Her shoes make small, precise sounds on the gravel. You can see, in the light from the screen, that her lipstick is slightly smeared. Not badly, not dramatically, but in the particular way that suggests it was recently perfect, and something has happened to it since then. You don't ask. That's not your business. Snack bar straight ahead, you tell her. Sandra will let. You use the phone? Thank you, she says. Her voice is back to its normal register now. Whatever it was a moment ago, it's been put away, rearranged. She's done it so quickly and so completely that if you hadn't seen her face in the first second, you'd think she'd just needed a phone. You go back to row 14, space 8, and take the order from the 2 girls who are still watching in the direction Patricia Hollis walked. What was that about? One of them asks. She needed a phone, you say. The girl makes a small sound that means she doesn't believe this but is willing to accept it as the official version. You write up the order. 2 Pepsis, 1 popcorn, 1 candy bar. The movie plays on. At 10:15, you knock on the window of row 7, space 3, Ronnie Dewitt's Bel Air. You knock because it's your job to knock. You check every car on your route, whether or not there's a previous order, because Dale says the car hop who doesn't check is the car hop who misses the impulse buy, the late night Coke, the candy bar decided on at 10:15 that wouldn't have been decided on at 9:45. The window rolls down. Ronnie DeWitt is alone. He's sitting in the middle of the front seat, where you'd sit if you were driving. But he's not driving. He's just sitting there watching the screen with one arm stretched across the seat back, and the expression of someone who's working through something and hasn't decided what to do about it yet. Need anything, you ask? He looks at you. The quality of the look is different from his usual look, which is the look of someone who has opinions about who you are. This look doesn't have opinions. This look is just the face of an 18-year-old kid at 10:15 on a Friday night, sitting alone in his father's car in a drive-in parking lot. "Coke," he says. "Sure." You write it down. A pause. "She call somebody?" he asks. You don't answer immediately. You write the order on your pad with the unhurried focus of someone doing their job. "I don't know who uses the phone," you tell him. "I just show people where it is." He looks back at the screen. "Right," he says. "You go get the Coke." When you bring it back, he takes it without comment. You see, as you hang the tray on the window frame, that his knuckles are scraped. Not badly. Just the top knuckles of the right hand, a little red, the kind of thing you get from punching something that is harder than a face. A wall, maybe, a dashboard. You unhook the tray and move to the next car. There's a particular skill you develop working a place like this, spending your evenings moving between other people's private moments. You develop the skill of not carrying what you see, of letting the 30 seconds at each car window be complete in itself and not part of a larger story that you're constructing. Dale has it. Sandra definitely has it. The ability to see something and note it and set it down. You're getting better at it. You're not there yet. You carry Ronnie DeWitt's scraped knuckles and Patricia Hollis's smeared lipstick through the rest of your route, and somewhere around row 16 you set them down. At 11 o'clock, the second feature ends. This is the moment of the evening that Dale calls, without apparent irony, the Exodus. 200 cars attempt to leave a drive-in theatre at the same time. This should be a simple matter. There are 4 exit lanes at the Valley View, which is a lot by local standards. Dale invested in the infrastructure early and has never regretted it. But the reality of 200 cars and 4 exit lanes, and drivers who've been sitting still for 3 hours and are slightly disoriented, and some of whom have had beer from the 6-packs they brought in the trunk. This is technically against the rules. Dale's unofficial policy is to ignore it unless someone does something that requires him to call the sheriff. And a substantial number of whom are teenagers who spent the last feature not watching the movie, is that the Exodus takes approximately 45 minutes. 45 minutes of engine starting, headlights sweeping, gravel churning, horns honking from the back rows where people are impatient, the occasional crunch of a bumper meeting another bumper at the speed of impatience, voices rising and then settling, the whole 200-car organism rearranging itself from a stable pattern to a moving one. Your job during the Exodus is the trash. You take the big canvas sack from the equipment shed. It's olive green and smells like popcorn and 3 summers of other people's leavings. And you walk the rows collecting cups, boxes, candy wrappers, paper bags, the occasional item that shouldn't be trash but is, like a woman's scarf left on a speaker post or a kid's sneaker. One sneaker. Just the one. Origin and destination both mysterious. in the gravel of row 3. The cars move past you on their way to the exit lanes. Headlights sweep across you and move on. People don't really look at you in this moment. You're just another piece of the night's logistics, the human infrastructure of the thing they've just participated in, already receding in the rearview mirror. You don't mind. There's something about these 45 minutes that you've come to like, in the way you come to like things you wouldn't have predicted. The particular silence that exists between the end of the movie and the end of the departure, when the screen is dark and the sound systems are off, and the only noise is engines and gravel and the distant frogs in the drainage ditch at the back of the property. The night smells cleaner at this hour. The fry grease has cooled. The crowd is thinning toward empty. You work row by row, filling the sack, and the lot empties around you. By 11:45, the lot is almost empty. 3 cars remain. This is normal. There are always stragglers, people who stayed for both features and are in no hurry. Older couples mostly, the kind who come to the drive-in because they genuinely like the movies and don't have teenagers at home anymore. And the Mercury in row 22. The Mercury hasn't moved. No lights. No engine. It's been there for 2.5 hours and it's still there. You finished your trash circuit. The sack is full and tied off by the equipment shed. Sandra has cleaned the snack bar and gone home. Dale is in the small office behind the snack bar, counting the night's receipts with the focused satisfaction of a man who has converted human entertainment impulses into denominations he can stack. You are technically done. Your shift ends at 11:30. It is currently 11:48. Dale hasn't said anything because Dale is counting money and doesn't look at the clock until he's done counting, at which point he will note the time and deduct from your hours or pay you overtime depending on a calculus that you have not yet been able to predict. You could leave. You could walk back to Aunt Clara's. It's 2 miles on Route 40, easy enough in the warm night. And that would be the sensible thing. You walk toward row 22 instead. Here is the thing about row 22 at the Valley View Drive-In, late on a Friday night in July. Row 22 is, in the ecology of the drive-in, a distinct environment. It exists at the maximum distance from the screen that still technically qualifies as the theatre. The sound from the speakers reaches it as a murmur, a suggestion of audio rather than actual dialogue. The screen is a rectangle of light in the distance, recognizable but not legible. You can tell that bodies are moving on it, but you cannot tell what those bodies are doing or saying or feeling. Row 22 is where you come when the movie is not the point. You know this. Everyone who has ever worked at the Valley View knows this. It's not a secret. It's barely even discussed. It's just a fact of the geography, like knowing that the north end of town smells like the fertilizer plant. What you don't fully understand yet, at 17, having grown up in Chicago, which is loud and crowded, and has no Row 22 equivalent, no geographic space specifically designed for this function, is what exactly happens there. Or rather, you know the general category. You don't know the specifics, the textures. You're about to get the specifics. The Mercury is a 54 model, 2-door, dark blue in the daylight but just dark at night. As you approach down the row, walking in the small pool of light from your pocket flashlight, Dale issues each car hop a flashlight for the purpose of reading orders in cars, and you've kept yours on your hip all evening. You can see that the windows are down, both front windows, both rear. The air through the open windows is what hits you first. Cigarette smoke, yes, but not cigarette smoke exclusively. Something else. The specific, complicated smell of people in an enclosed space over a long period. The warmth of bodies. Something underneath that, like, not perfume, but the memory of perfume. Hours old, mixed with night air and the residue of whatever was in a bottle that you can see, even from here, propped against the driver's side door panel. Not a beer bottle, something smaller, something that catches the light from your flashlight and throws back amber. There are 4 people in the car, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, all of them young, older than you, probably 20 or 21, which in 1956 is the age when you're done with high school and working a job and in the active business of becoming the adult person you're going to be, with all the anxiety and energy that implies. The guy in the driver's seat has his arm around the girl next to him, and they're both looking at you with the calm of people who have nothing to hide, because they've decided in advance not to be embarrassed by whatever they're doing. "We're closed," you say. "We know," the guy says. He's maybe 20, dark-haired, wearing a white t-shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He has the kind of face that photographs well in black and white. Strong jaw, relaxed eyes. He looks like he belongs in a movie rather than watching one. "You gotta move the car," you tell him. "Lot's closing." He doesn't move. Dale say that? Lot closes at midnight. It's 11:50. You look at your watch. It's 11:51. It's 11:51, you say. He grins. "I'll be gone by midnight." You look at the other 2 people in the car. In the back seat, a boy and a girl, both about the same age as the front seat occupants. The girl in the back is laughing at something the boy just said. Quiet laughter, the kind that's meant only for the person sitting next to you. "Dale's going to come check the lot," you say, which may or may not be true. Dale sometimes does a final lot check at closing and sometimes doesn't, depending on how tired he is and how well the receipt's reconciled. "I know Dale," the guy in the front seat says. "Dale and my dad went to high school together. Tell him Eddie Satori says goodnight." And then he looks back at the screen, where Invasion of the Body Snatchers has been over for 40 minutes, and there's nothing showing but the test pattern, and then the dark. You stand there for 1 moment longer than you need to. Then you turn around and walk back toward the snack bar. Dale is locking the office when you get back. "Anyone still in the lot?" "Row 22, you say. "Eddie Sartori says good night." Dale stops locking the office. He looks at you with the expression he uses when something has happened that requires him to file information in a specific drawer. "Eddie Sartori. That's what he said." Dale nods. He goes back to locking the office. "I'll deal with it," he says. "You're done. Clock out." You clock out. On the way home, walking the 2 miles on Route 40 with the flashlight in your hand, and the late July night warm enough that even at midnight you're not cold, you think about Eddie Satori and his car and his 2 friends and the way they'd been sitting there at 11:51 watching a blank screen. Or not watching it. Just being somewhere together. Just occupying a space where they are free to occupy it. This is the thing about the drive-in that you didn't understand when you came here, that you're starting to understand now. It's not about the movies, or it's about the movies the way a harbour is about the water. Technically, essentially, in terms of the physical reality, but not in terms of what the harbour is actually for. The harbour is for the ships. The ships are what matter. The water is just the medium. The drive-in is the harbour. What happens inside the cars, that's the ships. 3 days later, on a Monday afternoon, you go up to the projection booth. This is not part of your job. Your job is gravel level, Your job is tray and flashlight and order pad and change making and grease on your forearms. The projection booth is Dale's domain, or more accurately, it's the domain of the projectionist, a man named Walter Greer, who's been operating the Valley View's Simplex E7 projectors since the theatre opened in 1948, who owns the booth with the settled authority of a craftsman who does not need supervision. Walter Greer is 58 years old. He is the kind of thin that comes from decades of not noticing whether he's eaten or not, from spending his attention on things other than food. He wears the same thing every day you see him. Khaki pants, white short-sleeve button-down shirt, and a blue cap from the Korean War that he wears at an angle that suggests it was given to him in a moment of meaning and has been on his head ever since. He invited you up on Thursday evening, 3 weeks in, with the brevity that characterises all his communication. "You want to see how it works," he said. Not a question. He'd been watching you from the booth window, probably, watching you look up at the light beam cutting through the night air from the booth's small window, the cone of light that held the whole movie inside it, suspended in air before it hit the screen. "Sure," you said. "Come after the first feature. Bring coffee, black." You brought coffee. He let you in. And then, tonight, Monday, when the theatre is dark and Dale is off doing whatever Dale does on days he's not at the Valley View, you picture him at home, alone, probably making a list. You climb the external stairs to the booth and knock. It's open. The projection booth is not large, maybe 10 feet square, dominated by the 2 Simplex E7 projectors, one for each feature, threaded up and ready to run, and the control panel and the rewind bench along the back wall where Walter Greer is currently rewinding the previous weekend's film reels. The smell up here is different from everywhere else at the Valley View. Down below, everything smells of food and exhaust and summer. Up here, it smells of oil and film, the specific smell of celluloid, which is something between plastic and the memory of wood, sweet and slightly flammable. Walter doesn't look up when you come in. "Pull that stool over," he says. The stool is a 3-legged wooden thing that lives in the corner under the spare lens shelf. You pull it to the window. The window of the projection booth faces the screen. Not the lot, the screen. At this angle, 240 feet from the base of the screen fills most of your field of vision. It's dark now, just the blank white rectangle of the screen material with its slight texture, the way a canvas shows its weave from up close. But when the projector runs, you're at the source. You're looking down the barrel of the light. "Hand me that," Walter says. You hand him the empty metal reel canister he's gesturing at. He takes it without breaking the rhythm of his rewinding, the film feeding through his hands with the practice speed of someone who has done this so many thousands of times that his hands know the exact resistance of film stock travelling at the right speed versus film stock about to break. "Saturday was a good house," you say, because that's the thing people say. 204 cars, Walter says. 17 below capacity, clouds threatened rain in the second feature, kept the families away. You look at him. "How do you know the car count from up here?" He nods toward the window. "I count them." "From the booth?" "I count the headlights when they come in. I know the capacity of each row. I keep a running total." He holds up a small notebook on the bench beside him. "Every night. 8 years. You stare at the notebook. It's a standard composition book, black and white marble cover, worn soft at the corners. 8 years of counts, you say. 2,941 shows, Walter says, minus the nights we were closed for weather or equipment. Roughly. You know the exact number of shows you've run? He looks at you for the first time since you came in. His expression is the expression of someone explaining something obvious. I'm the projectionist, he says. The show is my responsibility. I keep track of my responsibility. He goes back to rewinding. You sit with this for a moment. The idea of a person who has counted every show for 8 years, who has been in this small room every Friday and Saturday and Sunday evening, threading film through the Simplex E7, watching the light beam cut out through the booth window and hit the screen 240 feet away, counting headlights in the dark. What do you do during the movies, you ask? I watch them. The same movies every week? Different movies every week. Same movies twice a night. He looks at the reel he's rewinding. I have watched Creature from the Black Lagoon 11 times. I know the creature's scene-by-scene blocking better than the director does. Do you like it? You ask. The creature. He considers this the way he considers most questions, which is as though it deserves actual consideration rather than the first response that presents itself. It's a sad story, he says. The creature wants something it can't have. The people it frightens are frightened because it wants what they have. It's the same story as most stories. You watch him rewind. Can I ask you something, you say? You've been asking me things. I mean something different. He looks at you, nods slightly. The cars that come in through the service entrance, you say. Late. Is that Dale's thing? Walter is quiet for 3 or 4 seconds. It's an arrangement, he says. With who? With the people who come in. He sets down the reel. Some of the older kids, the ones who've grown up coming here. Dale lets them park out back after midnight if the lot's closed and the lights are off. He charges $1. It doesn't go in the receipts. You absorb this. That's why the service chain is always loose, you say. The service chain has been loose since 1951, Walter says, when they stop being able to afford it, or when Dale decides he doesn't want the trouble. It'll get fixed. He picks up the next reel. Until then? Eddie Sartori, you say. Walter looks at you with something that might be approval. You pay attention, he says. I grew up in Chicago, you say. You learn to pay attention. Walter turns back to the reel. Sartori's father owns the lot next door, he says. The land the employees park on. Dale leases it from him. In 1951, they came to an arrangement. Eddie was 14 then. Now he's 20. And the arrangement continues because arrangements like that don't just stop. You think about this, about the economy of small towns, which is so different from the economy of Chicago, not in scale but in texture. In Chicago, commerce is anonymous. You buy things from people you'll never see again. The transaction is the transaction. In Millbrook, every transaction has a history. Every dollar has a relationship attached to it. The arrangement between Dale and Gerald Sartori exists because of something that happened in 1951, and it will continue because the land is still leased, and someday Eddie Sartori will own the land, and the arrangement will become Eddie's, and that's how things work in Millbrook. Things layer on things, debts and favours accumulating like geological strata, until the original reason is buried 20 feet down, and nobody remembers it. But the structure it created is still standing. What do you think of it, you ask? The drive-in? Being here? Walter finishes the last reel. He sets it in its canister with a precision that he brings to every physical action, everything placed exactly where it will be needed, everything in its exact relationship to everything else. He looks out the booth window at the dark screen. In 1948, he says, when this place opened, I drove past it the first time and I thought, that's where the light goes. He pauses. Every projectionist I've ever known, we all have a version of that thought. The light going through the film and coming out the other end into a story that hundreds of people watch at the same time. There's no other experience like that. The theatre is the same idea, but it's smaller. Indoors. The drive-in puts it in the open air, makes it bigger. He stands up, straightens his cap. I'm 58 years old, he says. I've been running projectors since I was 20, and I still, every night when the first show starts and the light comes on and the beam cuts through the dark and hits the screen, I still think the same thing. What thing, you ask? That it's worth it, he says. Whatever trouble it takes to make the thing happen, whatever it costs, the hour is worth it. He nods toward the door. Same time Thursday, he says. Bring coffee. You climb back down the external stairs into the warm Monday night, and you stand at the bottom for a moment looking up at the booth window. Dark now. Walter's moving shadow just barely visible as he finishes his work. And then at the screen, and then at the lot, empty and quiet, gravel pale in the moonlight. 2,941 shows. Every night the light has to reach the screen. The summer gets hotter. August in Indiana is not the gentle August of someplace temperate. August in Indiana is the remainder of July after July has decided it's not done. It's the sun on concrete at 6 in the evening still radiating back, the heat it stored at noon. It's the air so heavy with humidity that breathing feels slightly thicker than it should, like the air is asking you to make an effort. The Valley View adapts to August by selling more Cokes. You sell approximately 70% more Cokes in August than in June. This is not a precise calculation. You're making it based on the observation that Sandra refills the Coke syrup canisters twice a night in August versus once in June, and each canister makes roughly 40 servings. So the math is not exact, but the direction is clear. People are hot and they are thirsty, and a 20-cent Coke is cheaper than being thirsty. You're also hot and thirsty, but your 20-cent Cokes come out of your wages, which Dale tracks with a ledger entry for staff meals that is deducted from your Friday pay envelope. So you drink water from the tap behind the snack bar, and you save your money for the Ford's front left tyre. The Ford's front left tyre has become a personal obligation, a debt you owe to a future version of yourself and to your brother Danny, who will come home from the Gary steel mill in 5 weeks and examine every inch of that car with the systematic suspicion of someone who has earned the right to be particular about it. The tyre costs $4 at the Sunoco station. Jimmy Plumbo told you one evening when you brought him his 4 Cokes. You've got $3.50 saved from 6 weeks of wages and not spending money on things you don't need. 50 cents. August brings something else, the county fair. The Morgan County Fair runs from the second Tuesday of August through Sunday, 7 days, on the fairgrounds on the east side of town, and it is. You learn from Aunt Clara, from the Millbrook Gazette, from the sign on the First Methodist bulletin board, from virtually every conversation you've had in Millbrook since July. The event. Not an event. The event. In a town of 6,000 people that has 1 main street and 4 churches and 2 diners, the county fair is the calendar anchor around which the rest of the year orients itself. The fair means it is August, summer is ending, the harvest is coming, and we will gather and celebrate and compete and eat food that we would not normally eat, and we will see people we normally only see at church or at the co-op. And we will collectively acknowledge that another year has passed. The Valley View responds to the Fair Week by booking special programming. Dale puts up a banner on Route 40, Fair Week Special, double feature every night. $1.25 per car. He raises the price by 25 cents. This is a decision he clearly considers daring and has clearly thought about for some time, because he mentions it multiple times in the week before the fair, not asking for your opinion exactly, but not asking for it either. Fair week, the lot fills regardless, he says on Tuesday morning, standing at the snack bar counter with his clipboard. Demand exceeds supply, the basic principle of pricing. Yes, sir, you say, because this is what you say. 25 cents is not a significant sum to anyone who's already driving to the Valley View on a Friday in fair week. No, sir, but across 200 cars, 7 nights, that's $350 additional revenue. You do the math, that's right. Yes, sir. Which covers the extra popcorn supply cost and the additional car hop hours and leaves approximately $180 net. He taps the counter. That's business, he says. Then he walks away. You're starting to think Dale is not what he appears. Or rather, Dale is exactly what he appears. And what he appears is a person who has built an 11-acre entertainment business from a gravel field and a projector and a specific unemotional understanding of human behavior. And what you've been mistaking for blankness is actually a very precise form of attention. Dale is watching everything. He just doesn't react to it. He just puts it in the ledger. Fair week at the Valley View is the busiest week of your summer. You work 6 nights in a row, Tuesday through Sunday, and by Thursday your feet have stopped hurting in the way that feet hurt from new exertion and started hurting in the way that feet hurt from sustained exertion, which is a more settled, less acute pain, but also more pervasive, a background note to every step. The lot is full every night. Capacity plus the service entrance overflow, which in fair week Dale openly acknowledges and collects from himself, standing at the service entrance in the last light before dusk, taking dollar bills from a line of cars and pocketing them without ceremony. Fair week brings out people you haven't seen all summer. Some of them are from other towns. Shelbyville, Whitesville, farms between towns, the farming families who come to Millbrook for Fair Week the way people make pilgrimages, because the Morgan County Fair is the gravity center of this particular corner of Indiana, and it pulls people in. Fair Week also brings the carnies. This is the wrong word. They call themselves showmen, or travelling concessionaires. And they're not the dark figures of carnival mythology. They're mostly families or groups of young men who travel with the fair circuit through Indiana and Illinois and Ohio from May to October, working the games and rides and food stands, moving from county fair to county fair in a caravan of trucks and trailers. Several of them come to the Valley View in Fair Week. Dale has an arrangement, whereby people who can show a Valley View staff card from any of the fair's vendors get in for 75 cents instead of $1. The young ones, the 20-year-old carnies who are doing this for a season or two before some other life intervenes, they come in pairs and groups, park in row 22, and they're different from the Millbrook young crowd in a way that takes you a few nights to identify. They're not nervous. The Millbrook teenagers at the Valley View have a specific kind of nervous energy, the energy of people who are in a space that has been designated for their enjoyment, but are not entirely sure they know how to enjoy themselves correctly, who keep checking the people in the next car to see if they're doing it right, who have opinions about each other that matter because they'll all be in the same high school hallway in September. The carnies have none of that. They've been to 100 Valley Views in 100 Millbrooks, and the Valley View is just a place to go on a Tuesday night before the fair's Wednesday crowd. They don't care what anyone thinks of them because they'll be in Montgomery County by Sunday. You bring one of them a Coke order on Thursday night. 2 young men from Cincinnati, they tell you when you ask, who've been working the tilt-a-whirl since Memorial Day. And one of them says, unprompted, "You from around here?" "Chicago," you say. "How'd you end up here?" "My mother," he laughs. "Fair enough." He hands you back the tray. "You should come by the fair tomorrow. We'll put you on the tilt-a-whirl." What does that involve? You stand at the gate and collect the tickets and make sure nobody falls out. "People fall out?" "Never," he says. Then, after a half-second pause, "Almost never. You do not go work the tilt-a-whirl, but on Sunday, the last day of the fair, you go." The Morgan County Fair in 1956 is a specific, irreproducible thing. I want you to smell it first. Walk in through the main gate on Sunday morning. You go at 9, before the afternoon heat, before the crowd becomes truly oppressive, and the first thing you encounter is the animal barn smell, which is cattle and horses and the specific dust that comes from dry hay trodden by 1,000 pairs of feet over 7 days. And underneath that, the sweetness of cotton candy that has been making itself since before you arrived, the sugar-burn smell of spun caramelized air, and underneath that the grease of funnel cakes and corn dogs and the deep fryers that the food concessionaires have been running since before dawn, and underneath all of it the smell of the fair itself, which is grass and mud and people and late summer, and which is the same smell the Morgan County Fair has been and will be for decades on either side of this morning. The Ferris wheel is the first thing you see above the entrance gate, a 40-foot wheel, its coloured lights strung between the spokes, not lit in the daytime but visible as a structure of steel and intention against the blue August sky. Below it, the midway, game booths and food stands and the travelling rides, the scrambler and the octopus and the tilt-a-whirl, each one a small empire of mechanical motion, each one attended by its operators who have their own rhythms and private language. And at the far end of the midway, past the 4-H exhibitions and the livestock competition, rings and the home economics tents where women stand proudly next to their entered pies, the grandstand. The grandstand is where the fair's entertainment happens. There's a horse pull on Thursday, a beauty pageant on Friday, a demolition derby on Saturday. Today, Sunday, is the fair's closing act. A concert. Not Bill Haley, not Elvis Presley. Elvis is still playing county fairs like this one in 1956. Just not this one. Not today. Not in Morgan County, Indiana. Today's act is a rockabilly group from Tennessee called the Starfire Boys. 3 young men in matching shirts who play a specific kind of music that is not quite country and not quite rock and roll, and is completely, unmistakably of this moment. You get there for the last half of their set. The grandstand is packed, 300 people at least, sitting in the bleachers or standing at the rail or on the grass beyond the rail, and the music is coming from a PA system that is not quite powerful enough for the space, and is losing the battle against the ambient fair noise, but losing it in a way that creates a particular effect, where the music is more felt than heard. The bass of the drum and the snap of the snare hitting you in the sternum before the melody reaches your ears. You stand at the rail and watch. The lead singer of the Starfire Boys is maybe 22, with hair that has been worked into something architectural using materials whose nature you prefer not to speculate about, and he plays the guitar the way Jimmy Palumbo changes tires, with his whole body, with the focused application of force to a specific task. The guitar not so much an instrument as an argument he's making about something. The crowd knows the words, or some of the crowd does, the teenagers specifically, the ones who listen to WKQK out of Indianapolis on their bedroom radios and know the B-sides of the 45s they buy at the Rexall, who have their own relationship to this music that their parents do not share and in some cases actively oppose. You watch Patricia Hollis in the front row of the bleachers. She's there with two girlfriends you don't know, and she's not doing anything unusual, just watching the music, sitting with her knees up and her arms around them, her hair different from the Valley View version, less arranged, pulled back in a way that suggests Sunday morning rather than Friday night. She looks younger like this, or maybe more her actual age, which is 16, which is younger than she looks on Friday nights. She hasn't talked to you since the phone call night. You haven't needed her to, but you've been watching, in the way you watch things you're not sure you're supposed to notice, with the peripheral attention of someone who learned early that the city teaches you to process what's in front of you and register what's in your peripheral vision simultaneously. Ronnie DeWitt is not there. You don't see him anywhere in the grandstand or at the rail or on the grass. Which is interesting. Ronnie DeWitt goes to everything, not because he necessarily wants to, but because Ronnie DeWitt's social existence depends on being seen at the things that matter, and the Morgan County Fair on closing Sunday with a live band matters, unless there's somewhere else he needs to be. Unless Friday night's scraped knuckles and Patricia's smeared lipstick in the empty passenger seat have led to a Sunday where Ronnie DeWitt is absent from the grandstand. You don't know what happened. You probably won't know. That's not the kind of story that gets told to car hops. But you notice the absence. The Starfire Boys play 3 more songs after you arrive, and then they bow and go off to whatever comes after a Sunday afternoon fair set. The long drive back to Tennessee probably, the highway south, the summer nearly finished. The crowd disperses into the midway, cotton candy and tilt-a-whirl. You buy a corn dog from a vendor near the main gate and eat it standing up in the sun, leaning against the fence post, watching the midway empty, hot, greasy, exactly right. The last Thursday of August, Walter Greer teaches you to thread the simplex E7. This is not a small thing. The E7 is the workhorse of American drive-in projection in 1956, a 35mm machine built in 1946, maintained by Walter with the reverence a soldier brings to a weapon that has never failed him. The threading path, the precise route the film must take through the machine's gates and rollers and sound. Head has to be exact, off by even a fraction, and the image wavers or the sound goes. Off by more, and the film breaks, and then you're losing 10 minutes of showtime while you splice the brake and rethread, and Dale is watching the cars and calculating the lost revenue per minute of downtime. Watch, Walter says. He threads the machine with the fluid economy of someone demonstrating something they've done 10,000 times. His hands move in a specific sequence. Lead roller, gate, intermittent sprocket, pressure roller, sound drum, take-up sprocket. Each motion precise and unhurried. The film feeds through in a path you can follow visually, but not yet predict. Now you, he says. He hands you the film leader, the clear white portion at the beginning of the reel that precedes the actual film, and steps back. You look at the machine. You have watched him do this. You have some visual memory of the path, but standing here with the film in your hands and the machine in front of you, the memory is less clear than you thought. From the feed reel, he says. You start from the feed reel, lead roller, you get that right. The gate, you get that wrong, threading from the wrong side, and Walter makes a small sound that is not quite correction and not quite patience. Other side, he says. You go back. Try again. Gate correct this time. Intermittent sprocket. You study the machine for 3 full seconds before you find the right path. Pressure roller. Sound drum. Take up sprocket. You look at Walter. He examines your threading. He walks slowly around the machine, looking at the path from each angle. He adjusts one roller position minutely, with a touch so light the film barely moves. Run it, he says. You reach for the motor switch. The machine starts. The film begins to move. Through the gate, through the sound head, down to the take-up reel, everything in its path, and through the lens, through the aperture, the beam of light cutting out through the booth window into the dark lot. And the screen, 240 feet away, fills with the image. Just the leader, just the countdown numbers, and then the blank white of the pre-feature. But the screen is lit. The beam is cutting through the Indiana air. Good, Walter says. It's the most approval you've heard from him in 7 weeks. Now rethread it, he says, until you don't have to think about it. You rethread it and rethread it 12 times as the August evening comes down outside the booth window and the lot below starts to fill with cars and headlights. By the 12th time, your hands know the path. On a Friday night in the last week of August, something goes wrong with the projector between features, and Walter is in the bathroom and you are alone in the booth. The machine stops. Not a catastrophic stop, just a stall. The kind that happens when a splice in the film stock catches on a roller wrong and the film backs up in the gate instead of feeding through. You've seen Walter fix it. You've seen him do the specific sequence, stop motor, manually advance the film back through the gate, clear the court edge, restart. 200 cars are waiting in the lot. The screen is dark. Dale's voice on the radio. Booth! What's the hold-up? You pick up the radio. Film court, I'm fixing it. A pause. Who is this? Kowalski. I'm in the booth. A longer pause. Where's Walter? Bathroom. The longest pause yet. Fix it, Dale says. His voice communicates nothing. It never does. You fix it. Stop motor. Film back through the gate. Your hands remember the path in reverse. Clear the court edge. A splice joint that's come slightly loose. You smooth it with your thumb and 2 seconds of pressure. Restart. The beam cuts back out through the window. The screen fills again. 4 minutes total. From the lot you can hear, very faintly through the booth's single window, a scattered sound that might be relief or might be applause. When Walter comes back, you tell him what happened. He looks at the machine, checks your work, checks the splice. You handled it, he says. I remembered the path. He looks at you. He looks at the screen. He does the thing he does with his cap. Adjusts it slightly, a tick that seems involuntary. You're good at this, he says. It is the plainest sentence, but it arrives at the right moment and it lands like something heavier than its weight. You're good at this. You think, at what exactly? At threading film? At being in a small room with a machine and making the thing work when it stops? At paying attention long enough to learn something and then applying it when it matters? You're not sure which one he means. Maybe all of them. Your last Friday night at the Valley View is August 31st. You don't plan a formal farewell. That's not the kind of relationship you have with the Valley View or with most of the people in it. Dale is not a farewell kind of person. Sandra might hug you, you're not sure. Walter will simply note the fact and continue rewinding reels. But the last Friday is the last Friday, and you feel it in the way you feel endings, not with drama, but with the specific attention that endings produce, where everything has the slight heightening of things you know are about to be last. The last time you cross the lot with the equipment hand truck, the last time you navigate row 8 in the dark, feet reading the gravel by feel, the last time you hear the Simplex E7 fire up from inside the booth. You work your route from 6 to 11:30, same as every Friday. The lot is full, late August, warm night, the last good movie weekend before Labor Day. Dale books these nights strategically. Giant The Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor picture. 2 hours and 20 minutes plus a western for the second feature. Big night. The intermission rush is as chaotic as it always is. Sandra fills cups and bags with the same mechanical perfection she's brought to every Friday all summer. The families come and go. The couples in the middle rows stay. The older kids in row 22 arrive after 10 through the service entrance. A last summer night. Nothing to mark it as last except the calendar. At 9:15, during a lull in your car hop route, you climb the back stairs to the booth. Walter is there. The projector is running. First feature 40 minutes in. The beam cuts through the night air, steady, sure, the way it has every night for 8 years. You stand at the window and look down at the lot. 200 cars roughly spread across the rows, 200 small worlds. From up here you can see them as a pattern. The rows, the spaces, the little rectangles of light from the speaker posts. The occasional headlight flash as a late arrival finds a space. The screen at the far end of it all, enormous and self-assured, Rock Hudson's face, 40 feet tall. And the beam from this booth, this small room, cutting the whole 200 yards to that screen, carrying the story through the Indiana night. It is ridiculous, you think, that this works, that you can fill a gravel field with cars and run a strip of celluloid through a machine and have the light come out carrying faces and words and feelings that hundreds of people experience simultaneously while eating cheese fries and Cokes. It is absolutely ridiculous. It is also unquestionably working. I leave Monday morning, you tell Walter. I know. He doesn't look up from the control panel. I thought I'd say something. You said something. You watch the screen for a minute. Rock Hudson is doing whatever Rock Hudson does in Giant, which you've now seen parts of 3 times through the booth window and still don't entirely understand. What happens after the season, you ask? The drive-in in fall? We run through October, Walter says. Weekend nights, fewer cars, colder. Sometimes the speakers ice up in late October. Then what? Then it's dark until May. I do maintenance. Rebuild the projectors. Check the electrical. I have a list. A list, you say. There's always a list, he says. He hands you a cup of coffee. Black. You didn't bring any tonight, but apparently Walter keeps his own. I thought about what you asked, he says, a few weeks ago, about what I think of it. The drive-in, you say. Yes. He looks at the screen, at the beam. I said it's worth it. The hour. That's true. But there's something I didn't say. He adjusts the cap. Most of the things that are worth doing, you can't know they're worth it until after you've been doing them for a while. While you're doing them, it's just the work. It's just the details. Thread the machine, count the cars, clean the projector. The worth of it is only visible from a certain distance. He looks at you. You've been here 12 weeks, he says. You can't see it yet. The worth of these 12 weeks. You'll see it later. Maybe much later. He nods toward the door. Go finish. Your route, he says. Come back up when the second feature starts. I'll let you run the projector tonight. You go back down the stairs into the lot. You finish your route. The second feature that night is a western. Shane, which is technically from 1953, but Dale books it for late summer nostalgia crowds and it plays every year. And when the intermission ends and the lot settles into its final feature rhythm, you climb back up to the booth and Walter steps back from the control panel. "It's your show," he says. You sit at the panel. The Simplex E7 is running. You don't need to start it. It's already threaded and rolling from the end of intermission. But there are adjustments to make during the run. Focus, sound level, the small corrections that keep the image clean and steady. Walter doesn't tell you what to do. He stands behind you and watches, and you watch the screen, and you make the adjustments when they're needed, and the movie runs. Alan Ladd on a 40-foot screen in an Indiana field in August. The colours slightly warm in the projection bulb's light. The sound reaching the cars through 200 little metal speakers hung on posts. Row 22, in the dark behind you. Row 1, families in station wagons with children asleep in the back seat. Rows 8 and 14 and 16, couples in cars close together, maybe watching, maybe not. And the light going from here to there, through the dark, carrying what it carries. You make an adjustment to the focus, a half turn on the lens ring, almost nothing, and the image on the screen sharpens by a degree that you can barely perceive from here, but that the people in the front rows will feel without knowing why. Walter says nothing. The movie runs. Monday morning, Aunt Clara makes you breakfast before you leave. Eggs, toast, orange juice from a can. Reconstituted, slightly thin, but she makes it with the same care she brings to everything. The care of someone who was taught that feeding people is a form of love and has never reconsidered this. You sit at her kitchen table with the smell of eggs and toast, and the August heat already building outside the window at 7:30, and Aunt Clara sits across from you with a cup of coffee and asks you if you think you'll come back next summer. You say you don't know. She nods. She expected this. Your mother says you passed geometry, she says, over the summer. The school sent the retest, you say. I passed it in June. I know, she told me. Aunt Clara looks at her coffee. She also says you're different. Different how? She said you sound different on the phone. More, she said serious, but she didn't mean it as a criticism. You think about this. You've been on the phone with your mother twice all summer, once in June, once in late July. Both times the conversations were brief. There's only the one phone in Aunt Clara's house and it's in the kitchen, and Aunt Clara is always in the kitchen, and there's a specific awkwardness to having personal conversations in someone else's kitchen. I don't feel different, you say. Then, maybe. Aunt Clara gets up to pour more coffee. Your grandfather worked at a picture show, she says, filling her cup at the stove. Not a drive-in. This was before drive-ins back in the 20s. He ran the projector at the Majestic in Fort Wayne. He always said it was the best job he ever had. Why? He said you were the one person in the building who could see the whole thing. The projector and the screen and the audience. The whole story, start to finish. She brings the coffee back and sits down. Your Uncle Frank says you did good work, she says. He talked to Dale. I didn't know they talked. Everyone talks to everyone in Millbrook, she says, with a tone that communicates this is both the town's greatest strength and its most significant limitation. You finish your eggs. The Ford is packed, your bag in the trunk, the tyre changed. You found the extra 50 cents in the tip jar on your last Friday. 2 quarters that some couple in row 8 left on the tray in the warmth of a late summer evening, and you felt briefly that this was exactly the right way to find money you needed. Aunt Clara walks you to the car. She holds your face in her hands for a moment, the way older women do, with the particular tenderness of people who have loved a lot of people and know that the holding is always temporary. Come back next summer, she says. Maybe, you say. She lets go, pats your cheek once. Drive safe, she says. Chicago is a long way. Route 40 east out of Millbrook, through the flat country, the corn standing shoulder high on either side of the road, the sky enormous and blue and going on forever in the way that Indiana skies do, which is the way that skies go on forever when there's nothing to stop them. The Ford runs steady. New tyre, fresh oil, which you put in yourself at the Sunoco last Friday. Jimmy Palumbo watching with arms crossed and then nodding once when you got it right, which is his version of a compliment, and you've come to understand it as such. You drive east. The radio plays a rock and roll song from a Chicago station that you pick up around the Indiana-Illinois border. The signal coming in and out as you cross the low ground between the two states, the music appearing and disappearing like something between the worlds. When it's clear, you turn it up. When it fades, you drive in silence, and the silence has its own content. The engine, the wind through the window crack, the road, the corn on both sides going by in a pale green wall. You think about Walter Greer, in a booth not much bigger than a large closet, 2,940-something shows behind him, the E7 running steady, the light going out through the aperture into the Indiana dark every single Friday and Saturday and Sunday from May to October for 8 years. You think about Dale, counting cars with a clipboard, doing the arithmetic of 200 families simultaneously, building the thing year by year with the unsexy, absolutely reliable patience of a man who believes that showing up and paying attention is its own form of achievement. You think about Sandra, whose hands know the order before the ticket arrives. You think about the families in the front rows with their sleeping children and their big bags of popcorn, the couples in the middle rows with their fogged up windows, the older kids in row 22 with their dollar bills and their arrangements, all of them in the same field under the Ames screen, all of them getting something different from it. You think about the drive-in as an idea, not the Valley View specifically, but the idea, the thing it was, the function it served, the specific solution it offered to the specific problem of small-town American life in 1956, which was, here is entertainment, here is privacy, here is a space where you can be young and unsupervised and still tell your parents you went to the movies. The genius of it is not accidental. Somewhere in 1946 or 1947, someone figured out that if you put a screen in a field and charge by the car, you were solving 3 problems at once. You were making movies affordable, you were making recreation accessible, and you were creating the only private in public space in American small-town life. A space that was technically open to adult supervision but practically impossible to supervise. A harbour. The cars were the ships. Chicago comes up as the highway rises on the eastern edge of the city, and the skyline appears. Not the dramatic approach from the lake, which is what people picture when they think of Chicago, but the western approach, which is less dramatic and more honest. Industrial, horizontal, the skyline behind the neighbourhoods, behind the factories, everything layered like geology. The smell changes before the skyline appears. You're not in Indiana anymore. The clean agriculture smell gives way to the specific compound of a large city, the diesel and asphalt and the distant suggestion of the stockyards, even 20 years gone, the density of people who live close together in brick buildings, the smell of cooking from 1,000 open windows. You drive south on Halstead. The streets are narrow and familiar and full. You park in front of the apartment building on 64th. Same 3-flat your family has rented since 1947. Same narrow staircase. Same mailbox in the lobby with Kowalski on the handwritten label that your mother put there 9 years ago and never changed. You carry your bag up the stairs. Your mother is in the kitchen when you open the door, which is where she always is. She turns around and her face does the thing it does when you've been gone and come back. There's a moment where she's assessing, comparing you to the version she's been carrying in her memory for 12 weeks. She sees the forearms. She sees the brown from the sun. She says, "You got skinny. I got strong," you say. "You can be both," she says. She hugs you. She smells like lavender and the specific warmth of the apartment kitchen in August, and everything from before you left. "How was Millbrook?" she asks. "Good," you say. "What did you do all summer?" You put down your bag. You stand in the kitchen you grew up in, the small and familiar space with the window that looks out on the back alley, and the fire escape and the 3 floors of your neighbours' lives stacked above and below you. "I worked at a drive-in theatre," you say. "Clara told me." Your mother goes back to whatever she was cooking, stirring something on the stove. "A movie place. Was it interesting?" You think about this. You think about 2,940-something shows, about the smell of popcorn and grease and summer grass, about the gravel under your feet and the tray balanced on your arm, and the way your hands learn to thread film and make change and read the terrain of a parking lot in the dark. About the light going from a small room through 240 feet of air to a 40-foot screen, and 200 cars watching whatever it carried. About the things that happened in the cars, about Patricia Hollis and her smeared lipstick and the phone she needed, about Ronnie DeWitt's scraped knuckles, about Eddie Sartori and his arrangement, and the way he sat in the dark watching a blank screen with something that was not about the screen at all. About Walter saying, "You can't see the worth of it yet." "Yeah," you say. "It was interesting." Your mother nods. She asks you if you're hungry. You are. You sit down at the kitchen table in the apartment on 64th and Halstead in Chicago, Illinois, in the last days of the summer of 1956, and your mother sets a plate in front of you, and you eat. Now. Right now. I need you to think about a drive-in theatre at the end of the season. The lot is empty. The gravel is white in the moonlight. The speaker posts standing in their rows like sentinels, each one waiting for the car that will park beside it and roll down its window and hang the little metal speaker on the glass. The screen is there, enormous, blank, lit by nothing but the moon, which is enough to make the white screen material glow very slightly, so that if you stood at the back of the lot on a clear September night, you would see it as a large, luminous rectangle, vaguely present, suggesting the shapes and stories it has carried all summer. The projector booth is dark. The E7 is off, motor cooling. The reels are in their canisters. The booth smells of film and oil and the memory of every show. This is the Valley View Drive-In, Millbrook, Indiana, on a Tuesday night in early September, 1956. It is also every drive-in theatre that ever stood in a field. There were 4,000 of them in America in 1956, from Maine to California. Gravel lots and speaker posts and enormous screens lit by the light from small rooms a quarter of a mile away. They're mostly gone now. The land got more valuable than the shows. The multiplexes came. The VCRs and the cable boxes and the streaming services and the 1,000 ways of watching things in the privacy of your own room, which is the final evolution of the thing the drive-in started. That instinct toward privacy and entertainment, toward watching something in a space where you're not exposed. The drive-in democratized that instinct. put it in a field, charged $1, and in doing so, invented the American teenage night. Not the teenage night as it was before, sneaking out, dragging mane, the limited options of a town that has one main street and 4 churches, but the teenage night as something with infrastructure, a destination, a space specifically designed for the purposes teenagers actually need, which are to be seen, to be unseen, to be in motion, to be still, to be together, to be private. All of that for $1 a car. Think about the screen going dark. Think about the lot emptying, the cars one by one moving toward the exit lanes, gravel crunching, headlights sweeping across the rows, the whole field gradually returning to itself. Think about the last car leaving, and the lot quiet. Just the speaker posts and the rows and the screen and the booth, and somewhere in Millbrook, in an apartment above a dry goods store, or in a farmhouse 2 miles east on Route 40, a 17-year-old boy lying on a bed in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Not asleep, yet. Just at the edge. The summer is ending. September is here. The geometry retest is past. The tire is changed. The forearms are different. Something has happened to him that he can't fully name yet. Walter was right about that. About the distance you need to see the worth of a thing. He doesn't have that distance yet. He's too close. He's still in it, still smelling the popcorn grease and the summer grass, still feeling the gravel under his feet. But in 40 years, in 50, in 60, he will think about this summer. He will think about the Valley View Drive-In and the Simplex E7 and the light going through the dark. He will think about Sandra and her hands that knew the orders before the tickets arrived. About Dale with his clipboard and his arithmetic and his philosophy of management as a form of paying attention. About Walter adjusting the cap, counting the shows. He will think about row 22, and he will understand, later from the distance of years, that what happened there was not delinquency and was not wholesome Norman Rockwell recreation, but something in between, something specifically American and specifically of that moment in time when teenagers had the machines to be mobile and the money to fill a tank with 23-cent gas and the instinct to find the one place in a small town where they could be young and private and together in the dark. And that the drive-in gave them that place, and that someone built it, and someone maintained it, and someone threaded the film and counted the cars and cleaned the projector and kept the speaker posts working and sold the cokes, and that this maintenance, this steady, unglamorous daily maintenance of the place where a generation came to be young, was its own form of grace. You are warm now. You've been warm for a while, in whatever space you're in whatever city or town or house or apartment, in whatever version of the private dark the present offers you. The gravel is under your feet, or the memory of gravel. The screen is somewhere ahead of you, or the memory of a screen. You are warm and fed and rested enough. Let the city quieten. Let the sounds of wherever you are settle into the background where they belong. Traffic or wind or the house breathing around you, whatever it is. Just the sound of the world continuing, which it does, which it will, which you don't need to manage right now. Let the summer go, not forever, just for tonight, just to the place where it lives when you're not actively holding it. The specific summers, the specific smells, the particular August evenings you can still feel in your skin from years you can barely name. Grease on your hands, stars overhead, the light going somewhere. You have earned this, whatever the day was, whatever it asked of you. You've shown up and done the thing, and now it's late and the screen is dark and the lot is empty, and there's nothing more to do tonight. Nothing more to do except this. Let it come. The heaviness in the arms, the weight of the day settling out of your chest into your lungs, into the mattress beneath you. The boundary between thinking and not thinking, between the day's events and the place those events go when you stop running them. It's right there. Somewhere in Indiana, the speaker posts stand in the dark. Somewhere in Indiana, the screen faces east and receives the first grey suggestion of morning several hours from now. The simplex. E7 sits in the booth. The reels wait in their canisters. The lot is empty and quiet. In the morning someone will come. We'll thread the machine. We'll count the new inventory. We'll check the electrical and patch the gravel where it's worn, and adjust the speaker in row 7 that always comes loose. The work will be ready, but that's morning. Right now it's dark, and the lot is empty, and the screen is blank, and somewhere on a highway between Indiana and Illinois a boy is driving home. The radio plays. The corn is on both sides of the road. He drives. The light always has to reach the screen. That's all. Find the screen, send the light. Everything else is just the path between them. Good night.